What's up guys, it's Kev Talks here with another video. For those of you who have been following me, you know that I have steered away from more anecdotal videos, personal life story videos, because I feel like everybody on YouTube is doing that. I feel like it's redundant after a while, and also those videos, frankly, have always gotten me the least amount of engagement, so clearly people aren't as interested in that. So instead, I focused more so, especially this year, 2019, on videos on gay issues in the world, also just informative videos. Like I did a video on the science behind being gay, and videos on the best gay cities for dating and stuff like that. So anyway, this video is about to break all that. This video is anecdotal, as made obvious by the dramatic title of this video. And I wasn't actually going to talk about this. I was keeping it to myself and told a few close friends because it really marked me. But last night I was thinking about this. I've been thinking about it a lot. This situation that recently happened that I'll get into. And it made me think about a video I put up, I think like around exactly a year ago actually, where I talked about dating gay guys with HIV. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out on my channel. But in that video, I basically expressed how I personally didn't feel comfortable dating somebody with HIV and how I felt kind of guilty about it, but that's just how I feel. And obviously you should only date people you feel comfortable dating. But I was exploring that topic in that video. A recent situation kind of rocked my perspective on all this, so I'll get right into it. So last weekend, I went out to the bars in LA and hanging out with friends, whatever, and I meet this guy, and I was very attracted to him. He was super nice, super warm, super friendly. He said, come hang out with my friends and you know, let's chat and da-da-da, and just great conversationalist. I felt very comfortable with him, and I'm always drawn to people who have that natural ability to make you feel at ease and make you feel comfortable. So I was hanging out with him and his friend, and then they went to another bar and he said, come with us, come hang out. And I said, okay. And I went along with it, and we kept making out and we were drinking and having a good time. The bars are about to close, and he said, hey, some friends are gonna come over. I'm the person who always cooks for everybody. You should come over, I'll cook for you too. And we both liked each other, so we wanted to keep hanging out. So I ended up going home with him. He cooked for a few friends, and then I stayed over, and nothing too intense, nothing too crazy, but we fooled around. Needless to say, we fooled around. Then I woke up the next day. Something changed. The energy had changed. It wasn't anything evident or obvious, but you just feel when something's different. And it's not that he was completely disinterested all of a sudden, but it seemed like he's all of a sudden had like a wall up. He was more reserved and a bit colder. We still kissed in the morning, and he still said, you know, love to see you again, da-da-da. But there was something that felt different. And for example, when I said, you know, I'd love to see you again soon, how about next weekend we hang out, or sometime this week, I would want a guy, in my ideal world, a guy who's interested would say, absolutely, how about Thursday or something. And instead he said something like, yeah, sure, you know, I just work and come home, so just let me know. And it just felt very passive and disengaged. So I go home, go on with my day. Later I text him and I said, hey, I had a great time with you, you know, look forward to seeing you again. And he just responded, likewise, just one word. So again, it was this, like, okay, you seem interested, but like suddenly not so interested. And that's one of those things where you're like, maybe I'm reading into it too much, or maybe the person's just not a great communicator, or maybe they're really just not that into you, right? Later that day, we have another exchange kind of similar to that, where he's not really that communicative, and I'm like, all right, I don't know. The night that I met him, he had mentioned that he had been in a few articles because he had been a pro athlete who then came out, so it was like a big deal, I guess. So I ended up Googling him just out of curiosity, especially after this chemistry had started getting weird. I was just thinking about it more and more, and I was like, I want to find out more about this guy. And I Googled him, and I normally would not do that. I'm normally not a Googler because I like building up that mystery and giving somebody a chance to tell you who they are instead of making assumptions based off of pictures online and facts you can find online. But I felt an urge to do it, so I did it. First thing that pops up is an article, and the title was something like, "Former pro athlete comes out as HIV positive man." And my jaw dropped, because of multiple reasons. A, I'm like, this guy has HIV. And B, I'm like, you didn't tell me you have HIV, and we went to bed together. We didn't go all the way, but we still fooled around in bed. And my first feeling, my initial feeling was just kind of fear and anxiety. Not even anger or bitterness at him, but just like, what does this mean for me? Like, could I have just gotten HIV? Like, all these thoughts just like rush into your head. Luckily, I kept reading the article. I had enough patience, I guess, to do that in that moment. And in the article, he said that he was living as an undetectable man. And I thought that I knew what that meant, but just to be totally sure, I Googled it, and my suspicions were correct, that when somebody is HIV positive but they're undetectable, it's basically impossible for them to transmit the virus. At that point, they're so healthy and in maintenance of the virus that it's basically not possible for them to transmit it. So I calmed down and I was like, okay, I'm all right. And I also have a friend who's pretty educated about HIV, and I asked her a few questions, and she was telling me that it's not well known because there's so much fear connected to HIV and AIDS, but HIV is actually very difficult to contract. Is it possible to contract it from one encounter? I'm sure it is, but it's actually very difficult. They believe, I guess researchers believe, that you have to be exposed to it multiple times, multiple strains to contract it. So the likelihood of me getting it is incredibly, incredibly low. So I calmed down, and then the next feeling was, what's wrong with this guy? Like, how could he not share that? And then I thought about it more, and I felt, you know what? There's so much shame around this, that for all I know, this is a guy who thinks, I can't really transmit it. What difference does it make whether I tell somebody or not? Obviously, I think you should tell somebody regardless, but just trying to get inside the mindset of this man. I thought, he probably is afraid of rejection, and he figured if I tell this kid, he might not be interested anymore, and yet it wouldn't make a difference to his health because I can't transmit it to him. So that made me a bit more compassionate about it, but still I was like, what the hell, like, why didn't this guy tell me? And then I realized maybe this is why the energy was weird the next day, because he probably felt guilt and shame that he went to bed with a guy without mentioning this elephant in the room, this thing that's pretty important to mention. I might be totally speculating. He might have really not. He could have also just not cared, maybe. But it's interesting that, again, in the moment, I was making all these assumptions, and little did I know that he had this whole other aspect to his life that completely complicates his sexuality, his interaction with other men, and everything. As I said, the conversation just got kind of... I lost interest just because the spark was missing. And then the HIV thing obviously complicated everything. And he reached out a few days later, and I didn't respond because I just lost interest. And I just feel like if up front you can't be honest about something so important, what kind of dating situation would that end up being like anyway? So I stopped responding, but it made me think about the HIV thing again. Like, could I date somebody with HIV? And after unknowingly going to bed with someone with HIV, I'm now like, wow, it's not as scary of a thing as I was taught that it was, right? And also that I had conceived of in my own mind. Like, before this happened, and I made this clear in my previous video a year ago, if you told me somebody has HIV, would you date them? I would have said, no, I don't think so. And then now that I had this interaction with this guy, I still think if, on a Tinder profile I saw a guy who seemed cool and he said I'm HIV positive, I think I'd probably swipe left, just because it feels like a burden, like something that I would rather not deal with. Anything that could be a turn off, I think most people with dating apps, they just go, they swipe left. But meeting this guy in person, spending the whole night with him, helped me literally put a face to HIV. Like, I saw a representation of HIV, and I've never met somebody, as far as I know, who is HIV positive. So it kind of, I guess, like humanized it for me and normalized it. And so, although this situation was frightening at first, I'm actually really grateful that it happened, because I feel like this was a step for me. like as a gay person, it helped me evolve into the state that a lot of gay men have evolved into, which is not seeing the HIV thing as such a huge fear, this huge thing to be afraid of. And I don't think I'll ever see this guy again, but it made me realize if I met somebody who was fantastic and perfect and honest, for me that's important, to be honest about this and everything, I think I could actually be open to dating somebody with HIV. And so I'm glad this happened because it changed my perspective. Let me know what you guys think about this, and catch you later.